Okay, well, this morning, and Trent, I'm going the wrong way. If you have your smart device, your smartphone or smart tablet, the notes you'll find them on YouVersion, and also the sermon notes are on the bulletins back there in the back table. And if you didn't know this already, I stuck YouTube on there. We put our sermons on YouTube. It's just the sermons, but we've been doing that now for a good year and a half or so. And so be sure, and if you miss one, or if you just want to go back and check those out. I've had different people in town come up to me. I'm surprised who would even know that they're on there. But people come to me and say that they've been watching them, and maybe we have shut-ins. We have people who are home and don't get to come to church, and maybe if they have internet, they can. This is a way, at least, for them to watch our messages. So be sure to mention that to people. And Trent, you can go ahead and get that video ready. We appreciate Trent back there. He's Steve has been gone for a few Sundays. He's having a little problem with stress-related things, and I think all of us can relate to stress. And maybe he'll be back soon, but Trent's filling in for us, and so let's need to remember them. So I've got some never seen before footage of the Apostle Paul. Okay, never seen before footage of the Apostle Paul, and Trent's going to show it for us, I hope. Daniel's getting it? Maybe Daniel knew it wasn't going to work, and he's gone. You just drag it over. So, who got a deer? I know. Brandon got an 8-pointer. Seen the picture on that boy Facebook. You find everything, don't you? It's great. Okay, David got a 9-point. All right. Josh got an 8-point. Okay, Alan got one. Anybody else? Yeah, I seen that. Blake got a doe during youth season. Yeah. First follower. Now, where did Daniel go? It's downloaded. Oh, there we are. Okay, this is never seen before footage of the Apostle Paul. And you can stop it right there. All right. Now, you probably think this isn't the Apostle Paul because you thought he was much taller than that, right? But it's obvious that the Apostle Paul was a member of the charismatic church. No, I'm not going to go there. But Apostle Paul's, you can tell that he is obviously a leader, okay? He's out there by himself. He's willing to stand alone, no matter what others around him might think, and do his own thing. But, and he's convinced of his actions. He's convinced of what he's doing. But as a leader, is he really, what kind of influence is he really having around the people around him? And you can start it, Trent. He's obviously doing his own thing. He's feeling good. Now you can stop. Okay, what's happened? Somebody say something? We have the second follower, or what we might call, or what I call the second encourager. Now, the Apostle Paul was up there, and he was doing his thing. And now the second encourager, if the Apostle Paul was our leader, who would be the second encourager? Who would it be? Think about it. Just let me know. We're a small group today. We can just be open. Who would be the Apostle Paul's first encourager? Barnabas. Barnabas. Okay, that's good. That's good. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, this is Barnabas. Has this come up to the Apostle Paul? He's the first encourager. Now, what has Barnabas done for the Apostle Paul by coming alongside of him? What has he done? Well, number one, he has come alongside of Paul, and now Paul is being reassured that he's doing the right thing. He's also being reassured that what he is doing is credible, among others, because now he's got somebody that's willing to come alongside of him. But what else has Barnabas done? Barnabas has broken through the wall of insecurity, because as you will see here in just a few minutes, that there are others who wanted to join the Apostle Paul, but because of insecurities, they held back and decided not to be a part of this. But now, this first follower, now that Barnabas has come by and broken through that wall, and he's basically said, it's okay. He's made a door in that wall, and he said, it's okay to come out and be part of what the apostle is doing. And Barnabas has turned this rebel into a leader now, okay, by coming alongside of him. All right? Now you can start it again. We had music, but that's all right. We don't need it, I guess. They're just having a good time. They're doing the same thing. He's following what the leader has taught him to do. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but he waved over to the rest of the crowd and said, come on, it's okay. The door is open to come in and do what I'm doing. Now, these guys may seem silly, but sometimes things that Christians do seem pretty silly to the world, don't they? Okay, now you can stop. Okay, what's happened? Now we've got the second follower, or the second leader, or second encourager that has come in. Amazing thing happens whenever you breach that wall of insecurity. And somebody else comes in, and now it's not just an encourager coming beside a leader. Now we have a movement. Okay, now we have two following the leader. Now we have two encouragers. Okay, now you can start it again. I'm not sure where the first leader went there for a while, but our first encourager, there he is. Didn't think you'd see this in church, did you? Okay, now what's happening? You can play it for a little while. What's happening? Now, isn't it amazing what happens when you break down or make a hole in that wall of insecurity? Now what's happening? Just look at them come. Now all these people were sitting on the sideline not doing a thing when the Apostle Paul was up there by himself. But now that hole has been made in that wall, amazing things happen. People are running now to be a part of this movement. People are waving to others and saying, come on, join in what I've got. And now at this point, this is a tipping point here, that if you don't join the movement, then you're going to be maybe in danger of being ridiculed. So everybody's like getting up and trying to be a part of this. And you can stop it there and be fine, Trent. Thank you. Okay. So, what does all of this mean? What does all this mean? Who truly made this movement possible? Who was the one that truly made this movement possible? Was it the leader? It really wasn't the leader, was it? It was those who come alongside. You know, you see, in this day and age, we are taught that it's so important to be a leader. Everybody has to be a leader. Well, what would happen if all of us were leaders? If all of us were leaders, we'd all just be standing out there by ourselves, wouldn't we? You know, to have the ability to break through the wall of insecurity and stand by someone and take the risk of ridicule by following someone else's lead and not our own, man, that's invaluable. That's invaluable. That's what movements are made of. Now, how can we be that encourager? How can we be that first encourager that come alongside that singled out leader? Well, if you remember, I said earlier that they have to break through a wall of insecurity. Now, I don't know anybody that says, boy, when I get up in the morning, I hope that I run into some situation that makes me feel uncomfortable. I hope I run into some situation where I feel insecure, and then it just makes me feel so good to be able to face my insecurities and break through that wall. I don't know anybody that feels that way. Nobody wants to face insecure things. Nobody wants to feel awkward. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. It just doesn't come natural to go through those kind of situations. But to be that encourager, you have to be willing to. Now, why? Why would we be willing to face those kind of situations with possible ridicule waiting for us? Well, an encourager is someone that has a personal conviction. A personal conviction, and always looking outward to those who are needing encouragement. Now, what are you doing when you're looking outward? Looking at others? Or maybe I should say this. What are you not doing when you're always looking outward and looking at others whom you can encourage? What's something that you can't do while you're doing that? It's hard to look inward. If you're looking outward at others and trying to find others that you can come alongside and encourage, it's kind of hard to be looking inwards and being selfish, isn't it? And that's what these encouragers are all about. I think we have a great biblical example of this type of person, and we've already mentioned him. He was our first encourager, and he goes by the name of Barnabas. And the apostles called him the son of encouragement. Now, how does someone carry a title like the son of encouragement? How do you do this? Well, first you have to find authenticity about this person. It's one thing to talk the talk, but it's certainly another to walk the walk. And we find in Acts 4:36 that 36 through 37, it says, "And Joses, who was also named Barnabas by the apostles, which is translated son of encouragement, a Levite of the country of Cyprus, having land, sold it, and bought the money, and laid it at the apostles' feet." You see, Barnabas was willing to sacrifice what he had because of his personal desire to help others. And that's number one this morning. How do you become an encourager? How do you become that first encourager that can initially cause a movement to happen? You've got to have that personal conviction to help others. And it doesn't matter if it's what I have or whatever. I've got to have that desire. And we see by Barnabas doing this, we see his authenticity, don't we? Encouragement is not just a personality decision. It can also be a calling from God. And we find in Acts 13, 1 through 3, "Now in the church that was at Antioch, there were certain prophets and teachers. Barnabas, Simon, was also called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Madian, who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. As they ministered to the Lord and fasted, the Holy Spirit said, 'Now separate to me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them.' Then, having fasted and prayed and laid hands on them, they sent them away." I think what's important when we look at this scripture is the state that they were in. Were they just walking along one day and says, I think I'll be an encourager? They were fasting and they were praying and they were seeking the Lord. They didn't just show up for church one day and hear some message about being an encourager and they said, that's what I want to be. They were fasting and they were praying and they were seeking the Lord's guidance. If we want to make a difference in God's kingdom, where have we got to be first? Man, we've got to be in communication with God. If we want to know what our calling is, where have we got to be first? We don't have to feel, and I've shared this with you before, I'm not a real big fan of filling out these gifts assessments. What kind of spiritual gifts assessments do you have? You need to be in communication with God and let the Holy Spirit lead you in the direction of your calling. And I think that's where these guys were. Sometimes standing in support of someone may mean that you're going to be persecuted for those who don't like the leader. Acts 13, 49 through 50. And the word of the Lord was being spread throughout the region. But the Jews stirred up the devout and prominent women and the chief men of the city, raised up persecution against Paul and Barnabas, and expelled them from their region. If you're standing in support of somebody, if you're that first encourager, and somebody doesn't like that leader, well, they're not going to like you either. You got to be that encourager has got to be that person that says, I'm going to be persecuted for what this other guy's doing because I believe in it. That goes against the way we think. Being a follower or an encourager does not mean that you have given up on your ability to think for yourself. In Acts 15, 36 through 40. Then after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, now we're talking about Paul and Barnabas here. Let us now go back and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord, and see how they are doing. Now Barnabas was determined to take with him John called Mark, but Paul insisted that they should not take with them the one who had departed from Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. Then the contention became so sharp that they parted from one another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed to Cyprus, but Paul took Silas and departed, being committed by the brethren to the grace of God. So here is Paul and Silas. Man, they were partners. They went all over the place and they started these churches and done all this stuff. And now there's contention between them. Now there's a disagreement between them. And they even parted ways. So being that encourager doesn't mean that you're a robot. You're still able to think for yourself. Barnabas chose not to agree with Paul when Paul chose not to encourage. Paul did not want to take Mark. Paul did not want to take Mark with him. Barnabas said, let's encourage him. Paul chose not to encourage him. And so Barnabas split ways with him. Barnabas was still being that encourager. The encourager opposed the leader, not because the encourager wanted to advance his own personal position. His position was done out of love for someone else. Barnabas still wasn't about himself. When he opposed Paul, and some version says he opposed him sharply, it wasn't to say, well, my way is right. It was to say, I want to encourage Mark. Because he's a little weak. He's a little young in the faith. He was a little young in age. And I want to encourage him. Again, the key to being an encourager isn't just about making a conscious decision because it seems like it's a good idea. You got to have a genuine love for others that places the well-being of others before themselves. And that's number 3. It's not just saying, hey, I want to be an encourager today. It's having a true desire to help people, having a true love for people. Having that attitude that others are better than, I'm going to put others' needs before mine. How often do we do that? I'm going to put others' needs before mine. I'm going to encourage in this way. That's my desire. In the 2nd chapter of Philippians, we find the Apostle Paul saying, if you want to be encouraged by Christ if you want to share in His love, if you want to have fellowship in the Spirit, if you want to share in affection and joy of what it means to be in the body of Christ, there is something that we must do, and that is to be unified. We must be unified if we want to share and enjoy those things. But we must, how we do that is to esteem others better than ourselves. And that's number 4. So how often do we see this? How often do we see this? Hey, we're a room full of Christians. We live in a really Christian area. How many churches do we have in this area? We're in the Bible Belt. There's Christian stuff all around us, okay? How many examples do we have? And I knew that our crowd would be probably a little small today, so I just wanted to open this up. Let's just talk. How many examples have you seen of Christians putting others' needs before themselves? We ought to have all kinds of examples, right? The floor is open. Give me one. What? Jane. Okay. All right. What did that do for you? What did it do for you personally? Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else have an example where you've seen where maybe it's been done to you, like Jane said, maybe it's been done to you where people have sacrificed their own selves, and maybe it's their time, maybe it's their money to help you or to help someone else. Other examples that we have of this. They ought to just be flowing, shouldn't we? We're in a world of Christians around here. Okay. All right. We've seen that, certainly. Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you, Ginger. Absolutely. What are some examples? What are some examples that we could do as individuals, or that we could do as a church, or whatever, to show the world that, to be that encourager, that I'll put others before me, that I will sacrifice, just as we've seen Barnabas doing. He was selling his land and things, and he was given to the church, and of course he was doing a lot of other things other than just material stuff. What can we do? What are some examples that we could do to put others before us, to show that love of Christ? You see, and you've heard me say this before, but we live in a world right now, even in the United States, where Christians are receiving persecution. Okay? We're losing rights, and all this stuff is happening. And what do the non-Christians think about that? Seems like it doesn't bother them. If I'm not a Christian, it doesn't bother me. Why would they think that? Because the Christians are not making an impact on the unsaved. Because the Christians are not saying, I'm going to be this type of encourager where I'm going to sacrifice what I have. I'm going to sacrifice and think of others to be better than me. Think of others' needs before my needs. You see, if the church becomes that, then when the church becomes persecuted, there's people going to be standing up and saying, I don't agree with this because they helped me. I don't agree with this because I've seen what the love of Christ is like through them. But if we're not showing the love of Christ, and Jesus Christ is our ultimate example, Jesus is the subject, He's our ultimate example. Look at all that Jesus did for us, that He didn't have to. He put us before Him. Jesus is God. He didn't have to do any of the sacrifice that He made. What kind of example are we living that shows the world that? Or what are some things that we could do? I think about Gene. Mm-hmm. It's great. Good. Good. Right. What a blessing. Let me go one step farther. Now, everybody that you mentioned, I think it's great, Gene. Thank you for that. But everybody you mentioned loves you, and you love them. What are we doing for the people that don't love us? What are we doing? What are we sacrificing our time and our money and what have you for the people that don't love us? Now, when we do things for the people that love us, that's great, and it makes an impact. But what happens when we become that encourager to someone who doesn't love us? I hope so. I hope so. Okay, and that's great. I'm glad you said that because you just run right into my next point. What's the difference between rescuing and helping? What's the difference between rescuing and helping? Think about it this way. Think about it some night and it's dark and it's raining and somebody's got a flat tire on the side of the road and they're changing their flat tire. You see, I could run up to that person in my car and I could roll my window down a little bit and I could say, "You're doing a great job changing that tire. Man, you are a great tire changer. Here's $10. Roll my window up and take off." Or I could stop my car and get out and help them. You see, I get myself in trouble, which reflects the Christian world today? Throw some money at you, tell you what a good job you're doing, that I love you, but I'm gone. Or I'm going to get out and go along the side of you. Nothing wrong with giving and helping and these things that Gene is saying is great. We need to do these things. But what's the difference between rescuing somebody and just giving them help? Absolutely is what it is. I don't want those. I'll give some money, but I don't want those people in my house. I don't want those people spending time with my kids. I'll give them money. See, that's the difference in having that genuine desire to help people. Having that genuine desire to want to be a part of. And I can change things and I can be that. I know that was a silly video, but it made such a good point. Man, that guy went out there and he come alongside that leader. He come alongside that person. You guys can come up if you want to. I'm going to speak forever. Jesus has called all of us to come alongside Him, does He not? Jesus called us to be a follower of Him. What would happen? What would happen when Jesus was walking the earth and He come along, Peter, John, His disciples, and He said, "Follow me." We've all read that. We've all studied that. He said, "Follow me." And if they would have said, "Well, Jesus, can you just be there when I need you?" Are we truly following Jesus? Or we just want Jesus to be there when I need Him? Are we just a recipient of His grace? And I think those questions can be easily answered when we look at our prayer lives. What do we spend the most of our time praying about in our communication with God? What do we spend the most of our time doing? Jesus, how can I be a better follower of yours? How can I come alongside in what you're doing? Or do we spend more time saying, Jesus, I need, I want. Just look at our prayer life. We're just like that silly video. We're just like those people that's sitting alongside saying, you know, this guy's having a good time and I'd like to be a part of it, but I ain't getting up there and doing that until everybody else does. So, what kind of follower are we? What kind of encourager are we today? I guess is the question I'm asking. Are we the kind that just wants to help? We just want to throw stuff? It's uncomfortable to come alongside. We love coming alongside people we love. It's uncomfortable coming alongside people we don't, or that don't love us. People who are different. We're all prejudiced. And I'm not talking about just race. I'm talking about anybody that's a little different than us. Are you willing to be that encourager? What are we willing to do? And this takes place in our individual lives. What are we going to do in our individual lives? What can we do as a church? What can we do as the church, as part of the community? Are we willing to be a rescuer and come alongside? And not just a money thrower. Yes, Jean. That's where we got to be, Gene. Yes. That's the first encourager. Right. That's the first encourager. I don't care what people think, I'm going to go do it. Are we there? I hope so. I hope we are. I hope our minds are more open to people who need help, people who need to be encouraged. Maybe you're at school. Maybe you're at school and you know that one kid that one kid has decided that they're going to be this Christian. And they're going to live a Christian life, and they're going to act like a Christian, and they're not going to laugh at those dirty jokes. They're not going to say those dirty words, and they're not going to go where everybody else is going. And they refuse to be a part of that. And we know what it's like in school. And because you're a part of that, you're going to be separate. You talk about somebody that needs an encourager to come alongside of them. And that doesn't just apply to school. How about your job? Maybe there's somebody you work with. Maybe it's somebody in your family. Throw those insecurities down, open up that door, and come alongside. So anyway, I am going to quit speaking. So think about that this morning as these guys play, and do we want to be greater encouragers? That's my question for you this morning.